It's a little terrifying because you absolutely cannot miss.
Goalies now are completely at a premium.
Not, right? Like, Canada doesn't have a ton of great options.
What's up, hockey fans? This is The Big Show, brought to you by The Hockey News. I'm Michael Traikos. With me, as always, is Ryan Kennedy, and pleased to welcome back to The Big Show, Drew Shore, friend of The Big Show, friend of The Hockey News, and former NHLer. How you doing there, Drew?
I'm great. I've missed you guys. It's been a couple of weeks since the season ended, but it's good to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. And you're right. The season now is fully done. We're in summer mode. You know, hockey players are trading in their hockey sticks for golf clubs. And we already have our first non-hockey, summer moment. Former NHLer, former tough guy, Nick Tarnasky, went viral the other day playing golf and ran into an unruly golfer and ended up, tossing him into the pond, giving him a couple punches, punctuated with BAM every time he fought or punched, similar to like a Batman, movie character here. Not surprising that a enforcer would enforce, on the links here. But, Drew, you didn't play with Nick. I don't know how well you know him, but how likely is this where, you've got an enforcer and he's policing things on the ice, but off the ice, old habits are hard to break.
Yeah, I mean, most of those guys who are really tough on the ice are also pretty tough off the ice. I never played with Nick, but I heard some stories about Nick my first year pro when I was playing in the American League in San Antonio, and we have some mutual friends. And by all accounts, I heard he was a great teammate and a great guy. And for the other guy, it's just a very bad bounce. I don't think he's the guy you want to get drunk and start lipping off to on the golf course.
Yeah, well, you know what? If you're taking too long to line up your shot and tee, I think a lot of golfers can probably, sympathize with Nick. Ryan, have you ever heard of that? Because I've covered, everyone from Colton Orr to George Peros over the years, Mark Mathot. You always wonder, of all the guys to not pick a fight with, the guy who's racking up like 300 PIMs a year is got to be at the bottom of my list.
Yeah, I would say so. Though I don't have any stories per se, but I always remember I was at the draft combine years ago. This is back when it was still in Toronto at like a hotel ballroom, and Eric Cairns was working for the Islanders. And I just remember him like standing up near me, and he basically blocked out all the light in the room. He was just such a massive dude. So I can't imagine saying like, "Oh, you think you're tough?" Same deal. Like clearly the slow golfer who got wailed on had a bit of a Napoleon complex and probably a few martinis in him. But yeah, I mean, that's a big dude. Yeah. You don't mess with them.
I had a couple buddies text me, like, imagine that guy walking into the clubhouse at the end of his round. It's like you're just like playing golf. People are coming in, and like the guy comes in, clothes are soaking wet, like black eye, bruised cheek. It's like that's a very tough one to explain to someone. It's like, oh, what happened to you on the golf course?
Yeah, bad lie.
Bad, very bad.
Went into the woods, never came back.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to hockey. Right up Ryan's alley here. Gavin McKenna, one of the most highly touted prospects in a while. He's going to be draft eligible in 2026. Committed to Penn State. So Ryan, not totally surprising. We kind of saw this one coming, but what does this mean now for major junior hockey and the NCAA? Obviously, NCAA can start paying players, but is this the first of many dominoes to fall? And how big of a deal is this that McKenna has gone from the dub to the NCAA?
It's pretty huge because we're talking about the top prospect in 2026, and he's not the first domino to fall, but he's certainly the biggest. It wasn't that long ago that Keaton Verhoff, who might go second overall, lottery pick for sure, committed to North Dakota, leaving WHL Victoria basically at the same time as his teammate Cole Reshny, who was then drafted in the first round by Calgary. So we started to see it, but now it's a matter of, okay, well, if basically the best prospect in major junior right now leaves, then pretty much anybody is open season, right? Like anybody who has not signed their entry level deal, and we've seen a couple already. Ben Kindle signed with Pittsburgh, Lyndon Lakovic signed with Washington, so they can't play NCAA. But what about Porter Martone? What happens with Michael Misa if he doesn't make the Sharks? I would even hazard to say, like with Matthew Schaefer, I'm not sure if he signed his entry level deal yet with the Islanders, but if he hasn't, then technically he could play NCAA. So this is sort of, to me at least, it feels like a bit of an existential crisis for Major Junior, where everybody is available now. So how do you fight back? Like, what do you have? What can you offer that the college game can't? Because the NCAA, it's older, stronger competition. You have those elite players as well. It's a different schedule, but not necessarily a worse one. Like, is it better to play 60 plus games a year, or is it better to play 35 games and have more time for practice and weight room? Those are the questions that players and their agents / family advisors are going to be asking constantly now.
Yeah, I wonder if Major Juniors should start, paying players, and if you match the salaries, at least are you leveling the playing field, and are you going to see, fewer players now leave Major Junior for NCAA? That's a bigger question, because there's a lot of haves and have-nots in Major Junior, and obviously the London Knights could probably pay more than Penn State is paying, but tell that to like a team like North Bay or some of the smaller teams, and it's probably not going to be true. Drew, you went to Denver. What was it like playing college hockey, and do you see the appeal of the college schedule and more time in the weight room, as Ryan's alluding to, being a benefit as well as the extra money?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think for these elite prospects now, like McKenna's a bit different because he's a late birthday, right? So it's like, had he been draft eligible this year, who knows where he would have ended up next year. But I think that, now the ideal development path, if you're a great player, is to go play Major Junior for 2 years, probably from 16 and 17, assuming you're good enough to play regularly, and then go play college until you're ready to play in the NHL. So, I think from a college hockey standpoint, it's great. Obviously Penn State put a lot of money into their hockey program and is going to pay this kid very well, and he's a huge draw. I think on the Major Junior front, they're going to have to do something. Because like I said, I think that I don't see a lot of reasons. That league in general is very good, but like a lot of people would say, he's not benefiting that much this year, dominating another year. And I think college hockey, as good as he is, will be a new challenge for him, and it's probably the right development path.
Yeah, you got to remember, to Drew's point, like Gavin McKenna, he's already played not full seasons, but he's played parts of 3 seasons now in the WHL, and dominated, even as a rookie. Like, I think he had to wait till he was age 15, right, Ryan? And basically came over midway or even 2/3 into the year as a rookie. But even then, he was more than a point per game guy as a 15-year-old. So then he plays 2 more full seasons. What's left for him in the dub, where he similar to Austin Matthews going over to Switzerland, he was looking for a challenge more so than just looking to make money, because obviously McKenna's probably going to make more than enough money once his NHL career starts. But for a guy looking for a challenge, is the NCAA more of a challenge than the dub?
Yeah, it certainly will be. And I think the best sort of correlation is, for, our viewers that are familiar with, Canada's World Junior team, when they do their, their camps, they typically will play games against U Sports, like Canadian University All-Stars. And a lot of those players tend to be these days Major Junior players that couldn't make the pros, but they were still very good. And the thing was, they were older and stronger. They were all kind of like 21, 22, 23 years old. And, the World Junior team typically, it would be close because they were all teenagers still, and they didn't have as much strength. So, extrapolate that to the NCAA, where the players are, sometimes 24 years old, especially when you're playing some of those like ECAC teams. Those players, that's the best they're ever going to be. But you're still, as a teenager, on your trajectory up. So it's a great challenge because you don't have that man strength yet, and you're still building up your frame, and maybe you only weigh 175 pounds. So it is a great challenge, and that's what's so unique about the NCAA right now is you have, NHL first rounders, but then you have these guys who have been there for 4 years and, know their programs in and out, like a program like Quinnipiac or like Minnesota State. They've both been very good at building up using older players.
Yeah, I think when Quinnipiac won, their average age was like something insane. Like I think their average age was like 23 or 24 years old the year that they won. So I also think too, just from like a life experience standpoint, like I'm sure these kids are really kind of getting drawn to like going to Michigan football games and being on campus or going to Penn State. And I mean, for a lot of them, just for a life experience standpoint, I think that they're kind of like, I mean, he's lived in Medicine Hat for a couple years now, and he's probably ready for a change.
Speaking of people looking for a change, Isaac Howard is going to get a change. Was a Tampa Bay, draft pick back in 2024, first rounder. Wins the Hobie Baker Award after playing in Michigan State, I believe, and wasn't re-signing or wasn't going to sign his entry-level deal with Tampa. Basically, forced his way out, and the location now is official. Edmonton Oilers trading Sam O'Reilly to the Lightning. Sam O'Reilly was another first-round pick, couple years younger than Isaac Howard. But the Oilers get a young player here who should probably fit into their top 6 as early as this season. Ryan, did you like this trade for the Edmonton Oilers?
Yeah, I think they really kind of took advantage of the situation. And, Tampa gets a pretty decent prospect in Sam O'Reilly. You mentioned the London Knights later. Sam O'Reilly has gone through the London Knights system. So he got top-notch development there. And, he's a very good two-way center with some decent size. But, with Isaac Howard, you're talking about the Hobie Baker winner from Michigan State. And, during his college career, he has gotten stronger because he's not the biggest. I think he's listed at 5'11". But, he's started to round out his game. He can certainly put up numbers. And, from the sounds of it, it just didn't seem like, him and Tampa Bay were on the same path in terms of, what his role was going to be and when his role was going to be at the NHL level. With the Edmonton Oilers, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in training camp. Obviously, they already signed him. So, he would, I would assume, like what they brought to him in terms of opportunities. But, as a winger, you hope that you could get on a line with McDavid or Draisaitl. We'll have to see what happens because they have brought some guys on like Andrew Mangiapane. And obviously they had wingers to begin with. So it'll be very interesting because would he accept playing in the AHL this year if it came to that? Or was that the big stumbling block in Tampa Bay? I don't know for certain. But now he gets the chance to prove that he can play in the NHL right now. And I think he has a decent chance at it, but I also don't think it's like a lock.
Yeah, I guess similar to like Rucker McGroarty last year, leaving Winnipeg, goes to Pittsburgh thinking he's going to be playing with Sidney Crosby, and then, spent most of the year in the minors. But, a great pickup, like I said, for Edmonton. They needed young players on ELCs. They're going to have Isaac Howard as well as Matthew Savoy, who they got from the Sabres, basically at this time a year ago. So 2 young wingers who are going to cost next to nothing. That's sort of the MO, I guess, if you're the Edmonton Oilers. What do you think of this trade, Drew? And any reason why you think Isaac Howard didn't want to play in Tampa? Because again, like that's an organization that's probably, near the top in terms of, being able to develop guys and, slot guys in wherever, and they have success.
Yeah, you don't see too many guys really not want to play in Tampa Bay. So I thought that was interesting. I think that, I haven't watched a lot of this kid, but everyone says that, like you guys said, this guy has the potential skill level, the guy who went to Edmonton to slot in their top 6, which is obviously a dream scenario if you're one of these young players, because that means you're probably playing with obviously Draisaitl or McDavid at some point. I do get a little like Ryan just mentioned this. It's funny because like you read articles on this and everyone's like, oh, he's a lock to play in Edmonton's top 6. Like, I haven't watched the kid. I mean, I've watched him very limited, but like, I think I get a little bit cautious when anyone says who's never played an NHL game that he's a lock to play in the top 6. So I think that that's interesting too. And I also think like, I mean, not to go off on a huge side tangent, but sometimes like the supporting cast that fits the best with those superstar players aren't always the guys you think they'd be. I mean, I'm kind of thinking of like the Connor Sheary's, Brian Rush, Jake Gensel, Zach Hyman. So it's like, you never know if he's going to work out with one of those 2 stars in Edmonton, but I'm sure he'll get an opportunity based on his leverage. And I'm like, it'll be excited to watch how it unfolds.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like sometimes it's like the Michael Bunting works out as your guy, your third man, as you know, the Matthews Marner line or something like that. And you know, even Evan Rodriguez, like a guy that you know couldn't land, you know, a great spot in Buffalo, ended up being so important to that Florida Panthers team as well. So yeah, you're right. You never do know. I guess Edmonton's really hoping because you know they've got so much salary locked up into McDavid, Draisaitl, and now Evan Bouchard that they needed, you know, they need all the Isaac Howards and Matthew Savoys that they can find. This week we had rookie and development camp, I guess, starting last week as well. Drew, going back, you know, you're obviously a draft pick of the Florida Panthers, you know, back in 2009. Was that your first year that you had the development camp, rookie camp? And, you know, what was that experience like for you, Drew?
Yeah, I thought development camp is an interesting experience because every team does it differently. I think that like some teams now make them super competitive and like have a bunch of scrimmages. Other teams have kind of kept guys off the ice more. So I think it's a lot different. I remember back in Florida, like every year it seemed like we had a different GM or coach. So the experience was completely different. I felt like one year it was a super competitive scrimmage. The next year, I think we were playing volleyball on the beach. So it really changed year to year depending on who was running the show.
Yeah, they always do like cooking classes too. I always remember like they're trying to like impart that on like everyone, like as if like they assume you know nothing and all you're eating is like mac and cheese and going out for pizza every night.
Yeah, and then you have like the prospect who like probably needs that year 1, but then the same prospect is there like year 4 taking the same like how to cook mac and cheese class, and you're like, all right, probably this is not the best use of everyone's time.
I probably could have used that, you know, like they should have development camp just in general for any person going into university or yeah. Like, can you teach me how to cook onions, please? Or how to cut onions. All right. Did anything stand out in development camp? I don't think I heard anyone saying like, oh, this player just knocked the socks off of anyone. So, you know, it seems like it's a non-factor. And, you know, have you, Drew, like there was never anyone who you played with at, you know, rookie camp that, you know, wasn't expected to be anywhere close to the NHL that year and just came in and turned that into a training camp invite and then turned that into an NHL job?
Not really. I don't think I mean, there's guys who come into rookie camp and do that, like have a really good rookie tournament and then kind of prolong that into a good main camp. And then I've seen make the team. But like I said, summer development camp, I don't think, I mean, teams put too much stock into it because they're really only playing against other prospects. So I think that kind of the big jump for guys is once they kind of can get from rookie camp to main camp and start playing against guys who have been in the league for a long time. So I haven't seen it. I saw a bunch of clips just about like Montreal fans recording different people like prospects in their scrimmages and drills and stuff. And I think the biggest takeaway fan was just how crazy those fans are. But yeah, I haven't seen a lot on that.
Okay.
Yeah. It does feel like, you know, with the summer rookie development camp, like if you ask the team, they always say that, you know, whoever their first pick was, that player really stood out, right? Because it's all sort of selling the draft that they just had. I love the prospect tournaments that tend to happen at the end of the summer where, you know, you're getting those players go against players from other teams. And obviously they haven't been, and it's limited to sort of major, junior, and guys that are done with college at the time, because you at least then you had to keep your college eligibility. But those tournaments are always fun to watch. And, you do sort of see guys like going to Traverse City for years. Like I remember seeing Colton Parayko and Miro Heiskanen and like Adam Fox, guys like that, where they were just on the cusp. Moritz Seider had an incredible prospect tournament for Detroit the year that he ended up joining the Red Wings. So it's fun, and that's a little later on in the summer.
Nice. I don't know if you guys saw, Alex Ovechkin is already back in the gym. Videos of him doing some lunges, some like one-arm rows are in the gym. He looks like you could probably, lose a bit of the summer pounds, maybe, 20 pounds. Although I'm never going to tell Alex Ovechkin how to do things because the guy's just a specimen. Like it seems like, the older he gets, the more productive he's getting. Drew, when would you typically roll into the gym, or, would you give yourself like a month off at the end of the season, or, what was typical for you, for your summer?
Yeah, I would. That was kind of like the old school mentality. And then towards the end of my career, like guys started getting smarter, and I think guys are taking less and less time off now. Like Ovechkin might be a little bit different. But I know for a fact, like the really elite players now have kind of found out that, like, it's not a good idea to do absolutely nothing for a month. Not to say they need to be on the ice, but like you build up a relative amount of cardio and strength during the season. So completely taking a month off, I think is like not a good idea. But I think maybe just doing some maintenance workouts, whether that's 1 to 2 times a week or playing tennis or doing something. So I think the best guys in the game are taking less time off and probably starting earlier in the summer with less intensity and then kind of ramping it up to the season.
Yeah, I remember Phil Kessel turned heads and raised eyebrows, back in Toronto when he said that, he had been on the ice maybe like once before training camp started. And it was like, what do you mean you've only been on once? Like, this isn't the old NHL where you stop drinking and like put away your smoking habit right before the season started. But would that even be something that you would just keep up? Like, would you be hitting going on the ice constantly still in the summer?
Well, I know that the best players in the game are now. Like, I think that I would take a lot of time off and then skate a lot kind of towards training camp. But I know the best guys like don't like to be off the ice that long. And I think the funniest thing about that whole Kessel thing is like the follow-up question was they asked if he was scared about the skating test, which I'm sure a lot of people were nervous about. And then his next comment was, no, it's easy. And I think he ended up like finishing really well in the skating test. So he's clearly just one of those guys who's a genetic freak. And I always enjoyed listening to his interviews because it was a lot of out of the ordinary compared to some of the other hockey guys.
Yeah, I remember like talking to other players that around that time. And they said Kessel would just destroy everyone on like squats and any other kind of physical test. And it was like, the guy doesn't even try. He's a freak. And that's probably true of like the best of the best, where an Ovechkin, you're looking at him going, that's not what a hockey player is supposed to look like. And yeah, and he's like, I know, but this works for me and I can get away with it. So, I'm going to keep doing that. It's not fair.
That's right. It is interesting to me though, just that recovery time. And, Drew, you mentioned guys playing tennis and obviously they play golf as well. But just because skating is such an unnatural motion, playing other sports, even if they're a little more, well, quote unquote, relaxing, like golf. I know people take it really seriously, but it feels like that's probably a really good path. And I know we've talked about guys playing other sports before, whether it was like lacrosse when they're growing up or like Steven Stamkos playing like softball in the summer, just on like a men's league team. It does feel like just giving your body time to recover from those unnatural motions would be pretty important in the summer.
Yeah, I think certainly. I mean, I think that's the number one thing that guys try and do, like at the start of summer, is get healthy. And so that's obviously drastically different for players who were seriously hurt, but also guys who just maybe had hip and groin issues during most of the year, and they want to try and figure out a way to get that, kind of eliminate those going forward. So I think getting healthy and back to as close to 100% is probably priority one for all guys. And you also got to think too, at this point of the year, guys have been done for drastically different amounts of time. in terms of like how long they've been off. Like I can't remember the exact last date of the regular season, whatever that was. Like I think it was April 20th, maybe. So you know what I mean? Those guys have been off for a significantly longer time. And then there's guys like Florida who have played, I mean, 1 million hockey games over the last 3 years, and they might be more on the Phil Kessel program of leaving their bags in Florida and coming in a week before camp to get it going.
Actually, Drew, I got a question. Does your diet and nutrition change in the summer versus during the season where you're playing, every 2-3 days and you're on the road a lot? Do you have to be conscious of like how many calories you're taking in and what kind of calories you're taking in the summer?
Yeah, but I think that a lot of people would find this interesting. Like most guys that I know in today's game are eating healthier in the summer than they are during the season. Because in the summer, you're in your routine, you're at the same gym, you're not traveling. Like for the most part, you're at home or somewhere. So it's very easy to, whether you have a chef or your wife cooks or you cook or whatever, it's very easy to lock in. But when you're traveling all the time on the road during the season, you're worn down, you're exhausted. Like I think from a genetic body comp standpoint too, you're able to get away with a little bit more during the season with just how much like you kind of just need the calories in general. So I actually think people would be surprised by that, but most guys that I know eat cleaner during the summer and then it kind of during the year falls off a little bit.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense because you're just trying to, you're probably burning so many calories during the year that you're just like, it doesn't matter what you're getting in, just as long as you're trying to get something in.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about on game days, for example, I know a lot of teams are kind of cut back on the morning skates, but it's kind of like you warm up for a morning skate, you do the morning skate, you have a cool down, sleep for a couple hours, and then, are playing 82 or 84 games a year now. So it's just like, and the other thing too is just like guys don't realize like there's an emotional aspect to it too, where like guy plays a great game, like I don't know, maybe he wants a glass of wine or a hamburger and fries. Guy who plays a bad game, he might still want that hamburger or glass of wine. So there's a little bit of that element too, which doesn't really exist during the summer. But it's just crazy how like much the game has evolved from when I turned pro in 2011 to now. Like the best players are just so detailed now compared to how it was back in the day on all fronts. And obviously nutrition's a big part of that.
Yeah. I just love it though. Like you go into Buffalo and post game, they'd have like 10 pizzas laid out on the training table. They'd have all these wings and guys are just stuffing their faces. And I'm like, this NHL thing is getting better and better as a job operation. Because I'm like, I saw you guys roll in with chefs for lunch, and now you're getting pizza and wings from like the Anchor Bar post game. I'm like, sign me up. All right. I don't care how many minutes I play.
That's right. Reporters need those carbs too.
Boy, did they ever. Okay.
Yeah. Very, very important. You don't want to waste away in the press box.
My dad used to say it was always so tough to go to hockey tournaments with us because he would just eat like he was playing. Like you know what I mean? Because it's like when one of us is playing, like eat before the game, eat after the game, eat before the game, eat after the game. And he's like, I was doing the same thing, but I was just sitting there during the game. So we always had a good laugh about that.
Awesome.
So, Ryan, last year, Macklin Celebrini goes first overall. Artem Levshinov goes number 2 overall. Those are the only 2 guys that played more than 9 games in the NHL last season. Levshinov played 18 games. Celebrini had a great year, 70 games, ended up putting 63 points. I think I sometimes always forget like how great of a rookie season he did have.
Oh, yeah.
What are we expecting for this year's draft? Because obviously the Islanders are really pumped about getting Matthew Shaver number 1. Then you got Michael Misa going to San Jose at number 2. That's a team where, they definitely could use as many players as possible. But, looking at the top 10 or even the top 20, what are you thinking here in terms of how many guys make the jump this year?
Yeah, it feels like every year there's a couple, and I was actually kind of surprised when I looked at last year that Celebrini was the only NHL regular to go right to the show. But I think, Schaefer's interesting because he only played 17 games last year for Erie, right? He had mono to begin the year, and then, of course, he broke his collarbone at the World Juniors, and that was the end of his season. At the same time, like I wouldn't put it past him because he's such a gifted young player. He's very athletic, he's very smart, and the Islanders kind of need him, which is not the best reason to put a teenager on your blue line. But like I said, I wouldn't bet against Schaefer because he just seems so advanced and so mature in that respect. Misa's interesting because, like San Jose, like we don't expect them to be good again. They're still rebuilding. Misa, they could put him on the wing. I know he is a center, but, some people project him as a wing. And because you have Celebrini and Will Smith also can play either center or wing. You do have some options there. Porter Martone's a player I'm looking at as well in Philadelphia, just because he is a late birthday. He is big already. The Flyers aren't the deepest when it comes to their forwards right now. And I think he could help sort of up and down the lineup. He has killed penalties as well in junior. So that's another name that I'm very interested in. And then again, as we talked earlier, if like Misa or Martone don't make the NHL, do they go back to their junior team where both of them have obviously dominated the OHL? Or do we see like a late college commit from one or both of them? I mean, maybe it takes until the fall where we really have an idea there because neither of them can go to the AHL right now. So those are the ones I'm looking at that are sort of the most likely. But I'd say there's always somebody that comes out of nowhere and at least plays a few games at the beginning, like Jet Luchenko in Philly.
I wonder if James Higgins has an outside chance just because of how thin Boston is down the middle. Again, it's probably a real outside chance, but I wonder if he even just gets a few games at the beginning.
Well, that one's tough because he's at Boston College, so they would have to sign him before, right? So that would cleave his NCAA eligibility. So that one's very interesting because the Bruins would basically have to base it on his development camp, right? Where he's allowed to play with other Bruins prospects, but he wouldn't be able to play against other teams' prospects right now because he would have had to, so it would kill his NCAA eligibility.
Drew, you had Jonathan Huberdeau. When you were a rookie in Florida, he made the jump right from the draft floor to the NHL, I believe, as a 19-year-old. He went third overall and got there. Did you guys know right away that this guy was going to be, playing the year?
Yeah, I mean, I could tell right away that was a weird year because it was the lockout year. So there was a couple things that made that differently. But yeah, he was clearly a guy who just he was very skinny and probably undersized, but his hockey IQ and ability to read the ice and make plays was just clearly at the NHL level. And I think you could tell that right away. And I think there's a fine line of wanting these kids to be challenged but not struggle too much from a development standpoint. That's very hard for teams to walk and figure out. And it's not an exact science. And like you said, Huberdeau at the time was going to clearly be put in situations on the power play where he could be successful. I also think state of your team in terms of where you are plays a big role. Like you said, I think that Macklin Celebrini had a fantastic year and was able to play in pretty much all situations. And the Sharks were not trying to win the Stanley Cup. But had Macklin Celebrini been drafted by the Edmonton Oilers, it would have been very interesting to see kind of how they would have used his development while still trying to win, while not having as much room. So I think that that's interesting. And the other thing I thought you guys brought up is I don't know how it's going to work on the school front if, from an admission standpoint, if one of those teams wanted to add one of those players super, super late in the year. So it's because this is all so new that I was just thinking about, say the Islanders decided not to keep him on their roster for one reason or another, and he wanted to go to BU. What does that look like coming in super late, even getting him into school? I don't know.
Fair.
Yeah. One of those red-shirted guys just is off the team.
Yeah. Well, you're fired. But yeah.
Unfortunately, we got Porter Martone to deal with it.
That's what the transfer portal's for now.
Yeah, I guess that's where it comes into handy. We are well into free agency here. It feels like it happened 2 months ago. That's that's how slow the summer goes after July 1. But there's still some UFAs on the market. You tell me which ones are the most interesting out of this group. Jack Roslovic, who's been, I guess, rumored to join the Toronto Maple Leafs at some point. Jeff Skinner, who surprisingly still on the market after, I thought he played well when he was in the lineup for Edmonton. And then Jan Ruta. Ryan, who do you like out of that? Ruta, Skinner, or Roslovic?
I like Jan Ruta because you know what you're getting. Skinner's an interesting one because, he had some decent numbers in Edmonton. And I thought in the final, when he did play, he had his moments. But clearly the Oilers and Chris Knobloch, the coach, weren't entirely sold on him. So that one's an interesting one where it's like he's finally played in the playoffs, right? Like he broke his streak, but then he wasn't really that impactful. So I wonder if that's some of the hesitancy with like contending teams. But with Ruda, playing on a Sharks team, he was only -3. And I know plus minus we don't really talk about anymore, but when some of the other defensemen are like -31, it says something. Rudy's got size, and he can play sort of in the middle of your defense core. I don't think he's a bank breaker. So for me, he's sort of a guy that you could add like a team that needs depth and is kind of missing just somebody like a bit of a stopper on their blue line core. I think he would be worth somebody locking up, even a very good team for that matter.
How about you, Drew? Who do you like out of that trio of I can't believe they're still available?
I actually like Roslovic.
Yeah.
I think he scored over 20 goals on a team that doesn't score a lot of goals necessarily in the Carolina Hurricanes. I think that he's a guy who, if you're a contending team, you're happy to sign as your third line center. And when guys get hurt, he can play up in the lineup, and kind of same thing with the power play. So he's a guy that intrigues me the most about the list. I think that the Ruta question was interesting because plus minus, I don't love it either, but I think looking at it relative to other players on their team, you can pull some information from. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that like him -3 is really relevant, but when you say you kind of compare him to the rest of the D core in San Jose and see how significant it is, I think that there's some value there. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I know a lot of people are saying he's linked to ending up in Toronto with the Maple Leafs. Who knows what'll happen there?
Yeah, he's got a connection with Austin Matthews, I think, going back to National
NTDP.
Team Development Program.
Yeah, and Roslovic was a winger at the NTDP, and I thought that was where he was most effective because he's very good at going north-south up the ice. But people try to keep sticking him at center, and I don't know why.
Drew, those ties to the NTDP, they're pretty strong too, right? Like once a member, once a teammate there, is it like a teammate forever?
I mean, kind of, right? Like, I mean, I think it's
apparently not.
I mean, it's funny. I think that some teams are much tighter there than other teams. And I think a lot of that, though, is like, I mean, we just had an event last week, this golf event. My brother and Justin Falk ended up winning. And I mean, they've been best friends since they played together at the National Development Team. So I think that's kind of a team by team basis. I think that, I mean, the older you get, the harder it is to kind of stay in touch, right? Like I probably talk to 4 or 5 guys off my team, probably, I wouldn't say weekly, but maybe monthly. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's a unique place because at the time you're still so young and you just spend so much time with the same group of people, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like there's not many programs where you wake up at about 7 a.m., go to school all together till 1, and then are at the rink all together till 9 p.m. pretty much every night. So that's a lot of time to be spending with someone. So I know that some guys have developed some great relationships, and I'm definitely still friends with some of the guys on my team.
Yeah. Either friend for life, or you're just like, oh God, I've seen enough of you to last
yeah,
lifetime.
Exactly. I think there's definitely some of that too. We're like, hey, I'm happy you're going to Boston College and I'm going to North Dakota, and we'll see you then. Good luck next year.
Awesome. Hey, listen, the big show is brought to you by Sticks.com. Why break the bank on sticks when you can get a pro level composite stick without the pro price tag at Sticks.com? That is stix.com. Check it out and gear up. All right. And with that, we go to our final segment, which is rapid fire. This one, I'm going to start with Ryan on this one. In honor of the Nittany Lions signing Gavin McKenna, what is your favorite NCAA mascot name?
I'm going with the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, one of my favorite teams, and runner-up the Purdue Boilermakers, because Boilermakers, that's a pretty sick name too.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what is a Nittany Lion, guys.
I looked it up.
Yeah, I don't know either.
There's a mountain called Nittany near campus.
Okay.
So it's like the mountain lions from Mount Nittany.
Interesting. What was it at U of Denver, Drew?
Pioneers.
It was the Pioneers. They had one named Boone, who was like the big kind of mascot on campus. And then I think due to some stuff that was going on, they had to get rid of Boone. And now I think they're just the Pios. So, yeah.
Boone get in trouble? Was he on a golf course, maybe?
Yeah, Boone ran into Nick Tarnasky on the golf course and never came back.
He was like a little
cartoon. Did you have a favorite mascot name?
What?
Did you have a favorite like team name or mascot name, or was it Boone?
I mean, no, I wasn't even a huge fan of Boone. I mean, it was fine, but like it wasn't like I went there, but I didn't think it was like the greatest. I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't know. My mom played tennis at North Carolina, so like I randomly like was a chap like for like college basketball. I was always like a UNC, even though like I really had no ties to any college basketball. So I was always kind of the fan of what North Carolina was doing and like the kind of baby blue and white uniforms and kind of their mascot.
Nice.
Yeah, I guess not too far removed from when Jordan played there too, right?
Yeah, that was true. She was there playing tennis when he was playing basketball there. So I think that was obviously like a cool draw for everyone on campus, and pretty cool to watch.
Okay. Summertime is here, which means the barbecue grills are all fired up. Best summer food. Let's start with you, Drew.
Ooh. I mean, I was going to say anything on the grill, but steak or a cheeseburger for me.
I'm going to go corn on the cob because it's so seasonal, and I'm still waiting for my local place to get the organic stuff. Corn on the cob to me is just like peak summer.
Yeah, peak summer is like driving, like being on a long road trip, and then you see corn on the cob being sold at the side of the road.
Right.
That is the best. That's a good pick. You know, corn on the cob on the grill, Ryan. Like, there's something about the smell. Like, I always, going to the exhibition, like the C&E in Toronto, you could smell that as soon as you get onto the grounds, which is always great.
There you go.
Yay or nay? Kids playing organized hockey in the summer. Drew, you start us off here because you're talking about playing tennis and other sports in the summer. Were you a hockey all year round?
I was not. My answer to the question, that original question, was a yay, but I don't think it should be hockey 365 days a year. I think if the kid loves hockey and wants to play hockey in the summer, that is fine. But I also think it should be a priority to take some time away from the ice and play other sports or do things you're interested in.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm a nay for that reason where, I mean, if they want to play in the summer, that's cool. But then there's spring hockey as well. And again, like so many great NHL players played other sports when they were growing up. I don't think that's a coincidence. So I think it is good to try things out, even if it's just for muscle and health reasons.
Yeah, I think that, that toothpaste can't be shoved back into the tube because it's not even hockey. Like, I've got a kid who plays baseball and, it's baseball in the winter, indoor practices. And, we're in a dome, which is like kind of ridiculous because, why are you playing baseball in the winter? It doesn't make any sense. Last question here. A creative agency is proposing the Seattle PWHL team be called the Seattle Mutiny. And are we yay or nay on the name the Mutiny? And I'll start things off. 100% yay. But we need more names like Mutiny in pro sports. Ryan?
Yeah, I'm a yay on this. You get the maritime tie-in. Obviously, the Kraken are already there. And I've never heard of a team called the Mutiny before. So you get some real fun with the logo. maybe a pirate theme. That'd be pretty cool. So yeah, I'm on board with it.
Yeah, I would get all like reclamation projects and also people who have like a reputation as being a coach killer. Just go full all in.
Just go. I like that. I like that.
Drew, yay or nay on mutiny?
I wanted to disagree with you guys, but I think it's unique. I like it. It's obviously, I don't know. I mean, it's a good talking point too, right? Like we're talking about it here. I think it's great for the marketing of the game. And I think that like you've seen a lot of that stuff, even on the WNBA. It's just like the more kind of content and views they can get from probably non-traditional fans, I think is great. And I mean, I think that having a unique name does that for them and will definitely draw some eyeballs for them.
Yeah, I want a pirate ship, I want a plank, and I want someone being walked off the plank also.
Ooh,
so
nice.
You know, maybe it's, I don't know who would be the person going off the plank, but you know,
A lucky fan.
A lucky fan, yes.
Into like a ball pit. The mascot would walk them over the
Yeah.
plank, and then they get a gift certificate for whatever, the pro shop.
All right, folks. That's all the time we've got for the big show. I want to thank Drew Shore as well. That's Ryan Kennedy. I'm Michael Traikos. We got a long summer. We're still going to be chatting once a week with the big show. So make sure you tune in the next week, and we'll see you next time.